What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Skin in the Game podcast. I'm here with my co-host Ivan, and in today's episode, we're going to be talking a lot about kind of advice we would give to younger people starting out, specifically
Ourselves.
with everything going on. Now, both Ivan and I, for some context for the viewers, have had very different or alternative paths as far as kind of how we ended up where we are today. And I'll start with you, Ivan. If you want to just give the kind of 90-second elevator pitch of your kind of ascension in from like school into where you are today. And then I'll do mine, and then we'll kind of run into some advice we would have for younger people kind of looking to start out today.
Total alternative, not traditional path. So left high school being completely not interested in anything remotely normal, doctor wise or anything like that, doctor, lawyer, whatever it might be. But if there was one thing my mom said, is like, you got to go to school. So the deal there was, okay, then I get to pick what kind of school I go to. And the only thing that interested me at that point was editing videos. That I started teaching myself how to do. So I was like, okay, naturally, videos is like the ultimate video is film. So let's go to film school. So saved up, went to Chicago, left Texas, went to Chicago. And while I was at that film school, I got the gist in like one class, which was just like, all right, you're going to need to learn how to make money, or find a way to fund the film. And I'm like, okay, I'm in the totally wrong I'm like totally in the wrong place to learn how to make money. So it's like, okay, who makes money? And it's like entrepreneurs. And at that point, started DMing uh, local business owners in Chicago, and used to rent out cameras and gear inside of the film school to go like door to door and try to sell my stuff to make money. Because it's like, okay, then you can make the
Mhm.
films that you want, videos.
Yeah.
And then one of them that responded is a guy named Matt Sapala that you know, and run running a big insurance agency at the time, like 3,000 agents across the country. Did a lot of free work for him on and off for the longest. And then finally he was like, you know what, you can start part-time and then you can compete with this other guy for this position, building my social media. And I was like, that's like the same thing. You're just making videos, but instead of a movie theater, posting them on social media. So I'm like, okay, cool. People can learn that way. And then the moment that he was like, you can do this, I immediately dropped out of school because COVID was at the same time, and quit the job that I had and literally spent the next 4 years attached at his hip, 12, 15 hours a day, learning everything that he knew about business, sales, etc., and social media for myself. And then from there, went on and worked at another online business coach's business. And then from there, started my own. So, very different path. And I dropped out of school at 19. So,
Yeah. No, that's crazy. And it's very similar to kind of my path too. I remember I was in high school in the States, in California, and then all my friends were like applying to different colleges, and they're like, "Oh, I got into Paloma." Dude, I couldn't even tell you what these are. Harvard, you name it, SDSU, like whatever. And then I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go back to Norway because we have another year of high school in Norway, so like hopefully I get in there." Ironically, I didn't even get into the high school I wanted to go to. So I ended up going to like this small private school that was like my senior class, I think it was 1,000 kids in California, and then as soon as I went back to Norway, my senior class was literally like 60 people.
oh, dang.
So it was a big change in terms of like from one to the other. But regardless, then I was looking at schools and I was looking at like, okay, where do I want to go to college? This, that, and the other. And then I was like, I want to go to East Coast, West Coast, and nothing in between. Because I was like, okay, West Coast, you have like Silicon Valley. Like, I knew the whole concept of, especially me being in Norway, going to college was like, I just need to go into the right environments, and then from there, I'm gonna meet people, and it's gonna kind of take off from there. Like, I had this whole idea of, if I graduate college, it means I failed because it means that I spent 4 years and I didn't like get into the right groups of people to figure out what to do. And then I was like, ah, crap, that means failure. Literally. Like at that point, I've just wasted 4 years as opposed to using college as like a bridge to get me to wherever I wanted to go. So nonetheless, I was looking and I was like, dude, holy crap. Going to NYU is like 40 grand a semester.
Yeah.
And I was like, how is this even possible? I was like, how is this possible? Let alone like all the other expenses you have. So I was like, okay. Then I reached out to a bunch of entrepreneurs, Tim Ferriss, Gary Vee, Tom Bilyeu, PBD, and a bunch of them. And I was like, dude, is college still necessary? Like, I literally have the screenshot of like the message I sent. It's like, is it still worth it? The hook was, is college still worth it? Question mark. And then I kind of had a little bit more context. And Patrick was one of the people who responded. Him and I went back and forth. And then after like 18 months of kind of follow up and conversations, I ended up flying out to Texas, pitched him on some strategies I had for the company in terms of where they could take things and where it could go. And then I didn't get hired on the spot. Like, I think I was hired on the spot, but like they gave me more hoops and kind of tasks to try out and see if I could figure it out. And then I ended up basically dropping out after 4 months of college, moving to Texas, which was ironic because I wanted to go West Coast, East Coast, and nothing in between. But Texas it is. And then I spent the next basically 5 years building the startup there in terms of different aspects of marketing, content, this, that, and the other. And from there, I went out, started my own agency, and basically have been on my own since. And that's kind of my path. And I think to kind of adjust into this, I think definitely I want to keep in mind where, like, okay, what are advice or things we'd want to say? And if you, we'll just kind of loop back onto the initial conversation we had right now. So Ivan was just in New York for graduation for his brother, who's graduating at 25.
Yeah.
Considering like at that point, you and I had been in the workforce for like 6 years. But definitely like, how do you think that is now in terms of kind of the path we went, and what would be your recommendation of like, is it still viable what we were doing? Would you rather go to school? Like, kind of where are you at?
I For me, I think so now I'm 26
Mhm.
and for context, and I'm just thinking about myself because I think that's about the only person I could give advice to. And it's if I'm looking at the younger me, he made the right move because now if I wanted to go to school, if school was the best way to learn stuff, if I don't even think it is anymore, I don't even think it's relevant for a majority of stuff outside of connections. But if I were to do it again, I would do the same thing because now I have context around what I would need to learn, and now it's intentional versus I have no idea and I'm going to figure it out. Because if you're not intentional about what you're wanting to learn, it's kind of like picking a course off of a shelf with the intention of getting a certain outcome and having thought through the outcome much more ahead of time. Like I was even looking at because right now I'm involved in private equity activity and things like that.
Yeah.
So it's like now I see this $5,000 private equity certificate from the University of Wharton, and I'm like, okay, 16 weeks certificate from a university that makes sense. More so because it's only 5 grand to be in a group chat with a bunch of people who are willing to do that. Um, but
Yeah, because it is a pre-selection by all means.
yes,
Like it is. I think the only merit that it really stands on as far as like a traditional route is the aspect that a school has pre-selected people that it thinks are good enough for that school, and therefore that pre-selection gets passed on. Meaning, if you were good enough to go to Harvard, you're good enough to work at XYZ company, and then you go from like company to company to company. But that's where I think a lot of the decay is, especially depending on what you're trying to do, is like, is that what you're trying to end up into? And then obviously it's like an old institution versus kind of a startup or a rapid growing field or something along those lines, because connections definitely is one of the big or limited things that you can really say like, okay, this is why it's worth it,
yeah,
in terms of those things. But beyond that, it's also a matter of, okay, are you again intentional about connections? Like, I'm sure there's a ton of people that just
for sure.
drink around, waste time, and have nothing to show for it other than like a bunch of doofus butthead friends of theirs that's like, that's just the homies.
Exactly. I with What's interesting with connections is like social media is another way to do it. You and I both made connections with insanely out of reach people just through DMs on Instagram.
Hmm.
So like I think it's that is also cope with that, but I think I'd be able to at least make a more contextual decision.
Yep.
Um, but the biggest thing is you probably experienced this too is that we drank from a fire hose.
Oh,
Like
big
it
time. And like that
completely
was
left out, like completely inserted into a moving machine and expected to there's no job scope. It's like you figure out a
no.
way to add value or you're gone.
Yeah,
And
I think that's also a beauty of like the biggest aspect of just being thrown into the grinder and figure it out because you realize what's important. You realize that like you have to take ownership. There's no kind of census of, hey, this is marketing department's job. It's like this is marketing department. So I think that there's a tremendous amount of value in that. I think now, like part of one of the things that I'm having to unlearn slightly now is like as I move more from just hustle, grind, get it done to like, okay, who's a better person to do it? Like the whole not how, but who, which I think is like a layer two aspect of it. But regardless, I think that the best thing you could do, and especially early on, is just get a breadth of experience, understanding, and like get a totally different side of it. Now, I want to take a step back because you briefly kind of washed over this and I didn't really mention it either, but whenever you are making the decision of, okay, I'm out in terms of school, right? I think one of the big things that people worry about, and especially a lot of my friends where I was like, oh, like how did your parents react? Like what was that conversation like? Or what did that look like? So run me through the process of how it was for you. Like, okay, cool. You got the job with Matt in your mind, you're like, this is a waste of time, but they still wanted you to go. So I'm sure they weren't like thrilled about it right off the bat. Like, kind of what did that look like?
yeah, I kind of had a perfect excuse, which was COVID.
Okay.
So like that's one thing. But also like my mom's dream, like my dad didn't care. But my mom's dream is graduation from school because immigrant moving to the US, the
Yep.
ultimate dream is your kid graduating school and having better opportunities, etc.
Yeah.
So the biggest unlock for me was a video by Gary Vee. And he was like, would you rather have a difficult conversation with your parents now or have this low key resentment for them for the rest of your life?
Hmm.
And I'm like, 18, 19-year-old me was like, oh, yeah. Like, I don't want to have this type of, no way. So he's like, you got to have that conversation with them because at the end of the day, it's your life. And then for me, I was like, yeah, that is 100% right. And even just being in the school, it was like, they're like, the biggest thing you're going to struggle with is money. So I'm like, okay, I need to go learn money from this money guy, 1,000%. So for me, it's like logically connecting the dots because emotionally I wanted to do it, but it's like, okay, the emotional decision is made. How do I bridge the logical gap? And I remember it was a
Hmm.
conversation around, okay, what is the dream in my mom's head? Like, why does that dream exist? And I had a
Yeah.
conversation with her about it, and it was very much so. I've been turned down for promotions because I didn't have a degree and because I didn't know how to
Hmm.
use Excel.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's dumb to her, but like that's dumb
Yeah.
on the employer's behalf because that's what they've been
Yeah.
taught. So like that's also stupid on their part. So
Yeah.
it was a very logical conversation that like brought it from the emotional to the logical of like, okay, like what do you actually think happens after a degree happens? And she was
Hmm.
like, I mean, you're almost guaranteed a job over 60, $80,000 a year. And I can't imagine making that type of money because for her, she raised 3 kids as a single mom off of like no more than maybe 30 grand a year, 40,
Hmm.
maybe.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like the idea of 60, 80 is insane. And I was like,
Rolling in
that's
the dough.
if even if I was like in medical school or whatever it is, that's one thing. I'm in film
Yeah.
school. There's no
Yeah.
pipeline to like
Yeah. Yeah.
there's nothing
the
here.
only type of the only type of employment you're guaranteed is unemployment.
Is a service job in a restaurant. Like it is, that's it.
Yeah.
Like there's
Trying to make
nothing
it.
there. And I didn't I kind of said it that way, but I'm like, okay, if that's the end goal, like just do the math. 60,
Mhm.
let's set the bar, like, is that a reasonable number? 4 years of a degree. So that's 60 times 4. Or the bar, I believe the bar, I remember literally I was working at a grocery store and she was like in my headphone while I was like doing the work. And I was like, okay, so if $60,000 a year is the bar, if I figure out a way to make $60,000 a year by the time that 4 years is up, am I totally insane? And that was the first time where it was like logically clicked for her because I was like, I can always come back here. And at that point, she's like, whatever you do, I'm going to support you no matter what. But it is very risky what you're doing. And that's how I logically connected the bridge. It's like, okay, I have 4 years. Can I figure out in 4 years how to make $60,000 a year? If I was attached to the hip and shadowed an entrepreneur 24/7, yeah, probably. And at that point, also bought a camera on a credit card because I was like, if I, it was a $1,200 camera on the Best Buy credit card. And I was like, if I can't figure out 0% interest for 12 months. And I was like, okay, if I can't make
Oh, sick.
$1,200 over the course of 12 months, I probably suck at this and probably should do something else.
Yeah.
So at that point, like with Matt, immediately dropped out in order to work with him. And then Best Buy got the camera and I was like, we're all in.
Mhm.
And just to
Burn
test,
the boats,
burn
baby.
the boats. And dude, at the
I
point,
love
I
it.
was like on West Side Chicago in the freaking hood. Like, and he was in Naperville, like in the Frisco, Texas equivalent, and I was like in the Oak Cliff equivalent.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
like I drive back and forth like an hour every single day
Yeah.
just to even see him. And I think that's one thing I probably don't give myself enough credit for is like I had like an insane hunger to actually learn about it all.
Yeah. No, that's sick. That's sick. And I love how you're talking about bridging the gap of like the knowledge of like, okay, what is the aspect? Because that's one of the things I looked at too. It's like, okay, your parents quote unquote want what's best for you, but that's not really what they want. They want what they think is best for you. And in many cases, that's the safer route, right? They want to limit the downside of like, okay, they don't want to do those things. And the way I looked at it was very logical too, where when I was offered the opportunity to go work, I was like, okay, on one side, if we go college route, you're basically depleting your account 40 grand or like anywhere from like 40 to 60 a year, which means like we're starting at zero. 6 months in, like you're down to like negative 40.
Yeah.
12 months, you're down to negative 80, right? Or you're at zero, and then whatever you're making, which obviously in the beginning, it's not a whole lot, if any at all,
Yeah.
but you're at least incrementally making more. And it's like, okay, if I could make enough just to live off of and learn, then I'm compounding this way versus negative, right? So, like, that was the big thing for me where I was like, okay, 4 years, fast forward 4 years, right? I'm left with on the one side 250 in the hole, say, or like any arbitrary number, say 100, say 200, whatever, right? Negative. And then the other one, it's like, okay, cool. Say you work for 4 years and you have nothing to show from it for monetary. At least you're at zero, but you have 4 years of experience, which basically, even in that case, puts you 100, 150, $200,000 ahead in like the math equation,
Yeah.
which was the big thing that I looked at. And then so like that was a driver. And then the other thing was, especially in terms of like me deciding, is this a go, is this a no-go, is saying yes to an opportunity like this is a reversible decision because it's like, well, 6 months, it doesn't work out. You can always go back to school.
Yeah.
Like there's always a next semester versus the downside of the other decision. It's like, there's no going back. It's like, once you've copped out and you kind of like aren't willing to go out into the jungle and face the monsters, like at that point you're in school and you're going to keep going and you're going to kind of go down that path. So that was where I was really just looking at, okay, on one side, there's limited downside and a unknown tremendous upside, which is like the go out and venture on your own, figure out what you want to do aspect. And then on the safe, more kind of traditional path, it was more so, hey, stick with what you're doing, and follow that where like you know how that is going to play out, right? And like the irony is I love learning, so like I think college would have been sick, like I would have loved it. But it was just one of those things where it's like I'm going to lose more in terms of time by going to school than by not going to school, simply because I'm learning and like I'm gonna be older and I'm gonna be later and then stuff like that. Like, I mean, I have siblings that are doctors and it's like they're them starting working at 25, 26, 27. It's like nuts to me because it's like, dude, I got so many years under my belt at this point. Like,
Yeah.
what's going on here?
Yeah.
Granted, it's a different equation, but it's just the understanding of it. Because the other thing that I always tell people, it's like, dude, think of this like we as within the work career, we're still like in kindergarten.
Yeah.
And, like, when you put things into perspective, it's like, sure, I've
No,
been
I
working
don't
for
feel like
7,
it.
8 years at this point.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it, but we are.
Yeah.
Like, that I mean, granted, there's a huge difference between someone like you and I that have 5, 6, 7 years under our belts compared to, like, somebody who's first year, but regardless, in the grand scheme of things, us in comparison to, like, the other people we work with, which are a lot of clients and so on and so forth, like, we know nothing. Like, we haven't seen anything.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing that I always try to keep in mind of like, okay, what is there? Which kind of rolls into like this next part of where I want to drive this conversation is, okay, so we both believe still that the path is, hey, like don't reject modern or traditional in that sense, right? Now, what would be the things that you would say obsessively focus on if we're looking purely at the venture off on your own, like roll the dice, try something, right? Work with someone, join a startup, like something along those lines. What would be the skills in terms of skill acquisition that you would recommend somebody like ruthlessly focus on? What are the say 3 to 5 things where you're like, "Hey, if I were to tell Ivan in 2019, here are the things to focus on," what would you tell them and why?
There's a lot. This is like the thing before even going fully into that is like there's a few words that you and I gloss over
Yep.
that I know when I look back I had no idea what it actually meant. And
Mhm.
for example, a word is experience. Like
Yep.
we have 6, 7 years of experience of being in the workforce, but what does that
Mhm.
actually mean? And I think that
Yep.
ties perfectly into what the first lesson, like I guess lesson that I would teach myself is, which I mean I was right about it, is like exposure. Like you cannot learn or attach onto something if you're not exposed to it at all. Like with my family, like the immigrants from Mexico, the idea and concept of what private equity or venture capital or what a family office even is doesn't even exist. Like that's not even on the radar as like
Yeah.
opportunity or investment banking. That's not even like a thought of something that is even possible or like
Yep.
a career path that you can even potentially take. Neither is
Mhm.
going into business. So like, there's this really good. I think it was a podcast between Hormozy and Frisella, and
Yep.
Hormozy was saying like rich people or people that are get extremely wealthy, they just have a more accurate view of reality. It's different, but
Yeah.
they just have a more accurate view of reality, and that's why they can have make better decisions, and that's why they're able to make more money. So I was like,
Mhm.
that's interesting. So if you think about graduating college versus if you even think about our path, it's like we not only have been working, but we were attached to the hip to an entrepreneur who was working like 16-hour days every day. So really we got like
Yep.
not 8 years of experience, it's really like 16.
Yeah. In terms of pure work hours.
Because that but then also think about what all that exposes you to. And now you can
Mhm.
download what their view of reality actually is. So now all of a sudden you learn things like things that I didn't understand is like what actually creates value? Why is that important? What even is a skill? Like, cause even
Yep.
understanding that most people don't. What even is a skill? What is the purpose of them? How like the idea of making money is purely an hourly rate thing up until you understand that.
Mhm.
So that's the only thing is like exposure. And I think what I did is found a reason to be in rooms I had no business being in through just a camera. So the biggest lesson with that is like the experience is one, like getting the exposure to it is one thing, but you have to find a reason to be in the room to get the exposure to it. Which for my
Yeah, so get in the
my
room,
my
get in the room.
excuse was a camera, and it actually still continues to be, even though I'm not a videographer anymore. If a guy that I want to learn from or whatever it is has a need for a video or whatever it is, I still pick up a camera and will attach myself at the hip because I know what it's done for me in the past. So it's like
Yeah,
getting in the right room and exposed to things is the biggest thing by far.
yeah. No, I think those are good in terms of exposure, getting in the right room. What are if you were to give 2 or 3 more, what would you say, those would be?
Um, for me too, it's man, there's like the meta skills. There's specific skills, but I think marketing, because every business obviously needs marketing, so that's one thing that you
Yeah,
can learn. But the ability to understand people's problems and listen is the biggest skill out of everything, because then you can pattern match across different people's problems and all of a sudden you have a product. Like
yeah,
for me, it's like, okay, I would be really good at listening to people's actual problem. And that's just by like reading body language. It's like, okay, they talk about this like it's their issue, but really it's not, because you can tell that they're totally fine and their shoulders are still back and they're still happy or whatever it is. But then the
yeah,
moment that they start their shoulders drooping or whatever, like you realize, "Oh, okay, your actual problem is this. Your actual problem is this.
mhm,
How can I just go ahead and go about solving it?" And I think
yeah,
the biggest thing that I didn't have was um the biggest thing that I did have that a lot of people don't have is the curiosity to solve a problem for the sake of solving it instead of solving it for the sake of money only. Because if you don't go about doing it, again, you're not exposing yourself to the actual process of figuring something out. I don't know if
mhm,
that makes sense or it's like too woo woo, but like you all of a sudden you do research around this, you learn about this, you learn about this, you learn about this. It's like in order to scale a YouTube channel, all the tiny skills in between are like packaging the video. The video is
yep,
actually a product. The value proposition of the video, because it is a product, how to communicate via editing, how to communicate via camera, how to communicate via literally like how to come up with video ideas, how do you even know what works or not? What is the quality of the viewer? All of these types of things are only were only on my radar because at the age of 19, Matt was like, help me grow my YouTube channel.
mhm.
And all of the tiny stuff underneath was just found out in the process of trying to learn how to solve that problem.
Yeah. No, it's like you have the outcome of what you're trying to do, and then therefore, when you come across these things, you realize that they fall like they play a piece into the bigger outcome that you're trying to do.
Yeah. And then you can take that, and this one's been like a huge thing for me, which is finding the core denominator of your skill.
Mhm.
So it's like, okay, you need exposure to even be exposed to ideas and concepts you have no idea about. In order to be in those rooms, it's finding a way to actually add value to someone, which is listening to their problem. And for me, it's
Mhm.
always been a camera, and it even still is. I'll still get into rooms that I have no business being in because of a camera.
Yep.
It's like a hack.
Yeah.
And then it's like, okay, once you're in the room and you're in the process of figuring out someone's problems, the core denominator of a skill is like, what could you reduce that skill down to that could carry over into something else that's completely different? And what I
Mhm.
mean by that is like, um, I don't know, people think about everyone knows what bodybuilding is. Videography is a bit more technical, but like everyone knows what bodybuilding is, lifting weights and everything. But in order to be that, everyone knows when you're talking about a top-notch bodybuilder, they're disciplined in a sense, and they have these core like common denominators at the very bottom that then you can take that and apply it into a completely different domain. So like Arnold took the discipline and whatever it was, and now bro's a politician. How the heck do you even make that connection? But if you
Yeah.
reduce down to the common denominator, for me it was videography, but at the end of the day, it's communication.
Yep.
So it's like, okay, communication, the ability to communicate and simplify things is what content at the end of the day is. And for me, like it's like boiling it down, it used to be social media. So at that point, it's like, okay, I could help out any type of business owner with social media. But
Mhm.
then, that went from helping this guy do that to a relationship coach to business consulting to like an investment firm, SEC regulated investment firm. What the heck kind of business do you have being in any type of these industries, even having no background in any of them? It's because of the fact that I know how to do social media. But then I look at the
Yep.
common denominator about that, and it is the fact that I know how to communicate and simplify things all the way down to their bare components to get you to understand very simply. And then at that point,
Mhm.
it's like, okay, now reset the board, detach your identity from what it is that you do, and just look at the common denominator of it all. And it's like, okay, the core denominator is communication. So if I can communicate
Yeah.
and simplify things to people, what other areas is that important in? And
No, for sure. Like finding the vehicle of the skill you have and how you can transfer. I think that's a
the
huge,
root of the
huge
value of what you
component.
actually do, because you're not just a in a
Yeah.
machine, which is what college teaches you how to be, honestly, is like a specialized cognitive machine. But if you actually understand what value is, you can understand what skill, like why people actually want you around.
Yeah.
Is it like for me, it's been like, oh, he just gets it.
Mhm.
This is like a pattern that I kept. No, he just gets it. At the end of the day, he just gets it, and it's because I have the ability
Yeah.
to take your totally uncompressed thoughts and reduce it down into like 3 sentences that can go viral on Instagram. But
Correct.
remove the Instagram. Don't have your identity attached to the fact that you're a social media thing. It's just the
Yep.
fact that I can take your complicated shit and reduce it down to 3 sentences. And if you think
Yeah.
about how important what that can be applied to, it's like recruiting. That can be applied to marketing. That can be applied to that's an
Raising.
investment thesis to help you raise capital. That's like all these things, but it started because of doing videography.
Yeah.
So like mine seems super random, but when you do the common denominator, it really doesn't. And as long as you're continuing to be exposed to different rooms that you don't have no business being in, then at that point, that core denominator can be what you take over and be your reason to be in that room and your way to add
Correct.
value by learning. Because when you're learning, you're extracting.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. And I think that kind of goes into a lot of the points that I had here. I put together a couple of points in terms of some of the big things that I'd really be focused on. So I go back to like the early days of okay, what are things that I did, and I try to make these as universal as far as like, oh, I didn't post 7 times a day and this, that, the other, right? So
Yeah.
first one is the ability to separate yourself from 99% of people is just show that you want more work, like you want to take on more. I think is one of those big, big things that kind of inadvertently or we did kind of knowingly, but at every level, there's like people who just do what they need to do, and then there's people who want to do more, right? And who want to add more. And I know Kobe Bryant had a good example of this in terms of like when he got to the NBA, he realized like, oh shit, like all these people are casual. Like, yeah, they're the best in the game, but like they've gotten comfortable and they're not wanting to grow and take on that new step. So I think definitely if you're starting out, if you're the youngest, if you're the newest, it's like you got to show that you want it more than anyone else because that energy is contagious, which kind of rolls into the second aspect of you really need to focus on what you can control early on. And I remember thinking about this. It's like, okay, might not know a whole lot about the business. I might not have a whole lot of experience, but I can show up early. I can stay late. I can have the best attitude out of everyone. I can like make it up in other ways, right? And in the beginning too, one of the big ways I looked at it was kind of going back to how you were saying, like, we didn't really have 4 or 5 years of experience. It's more like five, it's more like 8 to 10, just in terms of volume of hours. In the beginning, would you know less? it takes you more time to do things,
Yeah.
which means the only way to increase those reps is to do more work, like longer days, right? Like a 8 hour or a 12-hour workday back then would be like 5 or 6 hours now, because it's like you're faster, you know more, you can focus more on the things
30
that move the
minutes.
needle. Yeah, let alone, especially with AI. I mean, that's a whole new kind of aspect, but it's really interesting as far as that goes. So in the beginning, you need to work more simply to make up for the fact that you're slower, you know less, and you're more unaware, which you just have to know that that's what it is. And I remember the thing that that drove me in the beginning was like, okay, cool. If I'm starting out and I want to hit mastery, which is like this kind of arbitrary 10,000 hours rules, it's like I could do that in, I think it's like 6 or 7 years if I just work normal hours in terms of 40 hours a week. You double that, you can now do that in half the time. And it's like, okay, in the beginning, you just don't have as much experience. Like the only way you can get there is just more volume, right? And that's one of the big things that I really did was like, okay, I had a good attitude. I was willing to take on more. I was showing that I wanted more responsibility, more, more, more. It's always like, hey, is there anything I can help you with? Is there anything I can help you with? I can't tell you the amount of times where I thought I was done for the day and I'd go say, is there anything else you need? And then like, I'd have another 3 hours of work. But it was like a good thing because again, you're getting more reps, you're getting more of that in the room of something you have no reason to be there for. You get a much better understanding of the business as a whole. You're finding problems, you're listening, and you're really just building these skills,
You're
right? So like
context
that would
maxing.
what?
You're context maxing, gathering context for your inner
Exactly,
LLM.
exactly, exactly. And then as a part of that too, I think that you just have to continuously kind of think of it as what are other ways I can add value, right? Like what more can I do is really one of the big gems of finding and then really looking at those. So like if we're thinking meta skills, those would be the first two that I would focus on regardless industry, regardless time. Like those I think are just consistent things where if you go into any company and you do that, even like if it were corporate companies or whatever, like those are good indicators where you're going to succeed in terms of universal rules. Um Other than that, I'd say to piggyback on what you were saying, like get really good with people. I think that's one of the most like missed meta skills as far as most things go of like regulate your emotions, be good with people, have an understanding, be polite. Like they're so basic, but they make such a big difference, especially at scale and like as you kind of compound it over long enough time to where like I remember I was reading like mastery, I was reading kind of a lot of psychology books in terms of understanding and like navigating because so much of work and life in general is just like managing drama or circumnavigating drama or being able to manage expectations, communicate clearly to where you're avoiding or not having to like get to the point where there's a lot of drama. And especially now with the age of AI, I think that the intangible soft skills are something that's going to become more and more valuable because a lot of the quote hard skills can either be outsourced, can be automated, or can be kind of easier. You can get to a level 5 or 6 in terms of a lot of things now way faster.
Yep.
And I think that other part is what's going to really take you far. Another thing I'd add is be intentional in terms of skill stacking. I think a lot of people, like you said, are like, they kind of just whimsical, like, oh, I'll do this, I'll do that. But in the beginning, it is really like they say in terms of the video games, where it's like, okay, you pick the skills you want, you pick the perks you want, and then you just have to get really good at that. And then you have to start looking at, okay, what are the perks that in combination make this way more powerful? Like, that's one of the things where I look back now and I'm like, damn, if I could have focused more on that early on, like it would have saved me so much time. Like I could have been so much further ahead of like, instead of me at that point not really knowing. Like I remember this is like 2019. Like I could be running Facebook ads if I wanted to in 2019 and really learning and harnessing. It took me like 3 years and a lot of fighting back until I kind of was like, all right, let me pull up my arms and let me do this.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So that's
Me too.
and I mean
Shit.
and like it's super easy and it's super simple and like you just have to know that you're going to be lost in the sauce for the first 10 hours 15 hours of what you're doing, and then you're going to slowly be able to piece it together. So that's definitely one of the big things where the more intentional you are about your skill sets, the more you can stack them, and ultimately you get that outsized return of value. Kind of like what you were talking about of how you can get in a room, be able to abstract it and take away from social media instead of it being like, oh, I make viral reels. It's like, no, no, I could do that, but in different business senses where it's way more valuable, right? Um, and then especially now, I can't move on without mentioning the aspect that you really want to find the emerging fields where, like, for instance, when you and I were starting out, it's like social media. It's like, okay, you knew just about as much, if not more, about social media than the guy that hired you to do it, right? It's an emerging field. You have an unfair advantage where where the playing field is leveled. Like there is no official expert because it hasn't been around long
There's no
enough.
playbook.
And that exactly. There's no playbook. There's no structure of exactly how it should be. And that's definitely the big thing now with AI. It's like, dude, imagine like you could now within, okay, so we're recording this on a Sunday, May 31st. Within 5 days of just putting your head down and spending like 5 or 6 hours looking into Hermes, OpenClaw, Claude Code, and like kind of getting a fundamental understanding, you could be in the top 1% that knows about AI and really how to maximize and do a lot of these things. Like you can do that. Does that mean you're going to be in the 0.1%? No. But if you're in the 1% or even top
Here's
10%,
the
it's
thing.
like
Does that mean you're
you
gonna
know
end up
so much
being
more.
does that mean you're gonna end up making anything out of doing that? No. But now you have an excuse to be in a room because these
Yes.
rich people that are old and finished have no idea about AI or no idea about social media. So all of a sudden you have an excuse to be in a room at what's called a, it's not like a hopeless intern that's like getting my coffee and it's like a pest. It's like an
Yeah.
enjoyable young guy who teaches me things, but he doesn't realize he teaches me things. So it's like,
Mhm.
what value do you have to bring to a 7-year-old that's worth multiple nine figures that has 50 plus years of experience? What the heck does that guy have any business talking to you? And the
Mhm.
answer is the fact that you have had the time and you're more native to the tech. So like social media is one thing. The other thing is like that'll get you in the room with freaking politicians. Like if you know how to clip, that'll get you in the room with politicians. And at that point, you can start learning how to like run a country or whatever it is. Like you can figure
Yeah.
out whatever you want from there. It's
Yeah. You're 3 skills away from anything.
you literally like at that point, it's like the excuse to get in the room is the biggest thing because all of a sudden now you have, dude, one event that I got into is an invite only, finance only event where it was only like 150 people in that room. And the only reason
Mhm.
I got in that room was because the guy that I was helping out, he wanted to interview his mentor and he needed someone with a camera that he
That's
trusted.
sick.
And the only reason I got
Yeah.
in that room was in order to do that. And what was that room? It was a KPMG hosted event for finance and private equity. And at that point, I got like an 8-hour long education for 2 days around finance and private equity. I had no idea what the heck they were saying, but at that point, you can go learn from there. But the only reason is because I had a freaking camera and a microphone and I can get in the room. And then at that point, you can just, you're now exposed to like, dude, I never forget they opened up the guy. So one of the speakers was a partner at Goldman Sachs. And he was like, to make the most out of everyone's time, I'm only going to talk about mergers and acquisitions that are actually relevant to everyone here. So it's like worth your
Yeah.
time. So I'm not going to talk about any deals underneath 500 million to $1 billion. Like I think anything less than that is a waste of everyone's time. And I'm just there like,
Yeah.
dog,
Total waste of my
dog,
time, bro.
what?
Yeah.
And the only reason I'm there all day is for the 30-minute window of he gets to interview his mentor who was on the board of the event. And he's like, yeah, bring along whoever you want.
Yeah.
But like, for example, with the AI thing, all of a sudden now you're the AI guy in this guy's mind. And then that creates other problems, which I'm sure you've experienced of like having to
No, for
graduate
sure.
from
And I
that.
think
But
as a part of that too, it's like it's one of the few situations where you're more of a equal in the conversation. It's like you're
you're not
like
just
if
taking.
you're talking,
That's the biggest
yeah,
thing. You're not
exactly.
just taking from people, and everyone that's successful is just used to everyone taking, taking, taking,
Yeah.
taking, taking.
Yes.
At that point, you're
And in
giving.
this case, no, exactly. And it's like the amount of things that you could teach someone, like teach an old dog a new trick, it's like they know all the tricks in a sense, but in this case, they don't because it's unfamiliar. And especially a lot of it, especially now, it's like, dude, it's changing so fast that like it's a full time job just to keep up with it. But
Yeah.
that's where you have that bandwidth and you have that capacity. And I think that's where you need to use it to your unfair advantage of really being like utilizing that and leveraging it to the full extent, because it's not like you said, you're not that dynamic intern of like, oh, you're just getting in the way, this, that, the other. It's like, no, it's like, hey, here's this thing that is taking you XYZ time. We can automate it. Or here's what an agent is, or here's what this is, right? And that's where I think a lot of it is. And that also kind of comes down to the one thing that neither of us has mentioned, but I think is one of the biggest things. It's like when you're around someone like whether it's a mentor or a boss or something like that, one of the best things you want to do is you want to show to them that their time in terms of feedback or what they're telling you is being used wisely. Which means that like, okay, they tell you, hey, we need to do this one thing, or let's look into this. Then you go in and you look into that and you're like, hey, you remember how you said this one thing? Oh yeah. So I looked into it and here's what I found. Da 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 da. And then what that's gonna do, it's gonna create a kind of reciprocity loop and reinforcement loop of like, okay, cool. I give him a little bit of time, I throw him a bone or something like that, and he comes back tenfold. Like it's worth it. It's not a waste of my time because that's where a lot of people go wrong in the sense of how to really position yourself in a way where like you get the people that you want to get a hold of to actually kind of invest into you is that aspect of they know that you're coachable and that you're kind of not wasting their time, because that's so many people in terms of they just take it, they get the advice, they don't do anything, and it's like, okay, that was just a complete waste of my afternoon.
Yeah.
Like I'm never doing that
What's the
again.
point of handing them a bone and anything? Like, it's actually worse handing it off to you because you just confuse me more. But with
Yeah.
like, I was even thinking about what's the prerequisite to even that? Because there's like a layer you could pull back to all of it. It's like, okay, learning AI. What's the requisite to that? Is like just picking something and sticking to it. Okay, what's the prerequisite to that? Why would you even look in that direction? And this one's been the biggest thing for me, and it's even something that I'm having to not unlearn, but now it's like, okay, uh, like go a different direction now. w- Is attaching your identity to what the task that you do is like the
Hmm.
most dangerous shit of all time.
Yeah.
Because like the way that I learned it was I would be at events where they would hire other videographers, and like the most insane sight to me is like a 45-year-old videographer. And
Yeah.
I'm just like, you've been behind the camera of like millionaires, billionaires, this, that, the other. Nothing else was more interesting than just being there pressing record on the camera. Don't get me wrong, there's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with it. There's like,
No.
for me, it was terrifying because I'm just like, if I'm still a videographer at 45, I'm doing something like this, that is not it.
Yeah.
But if I had emotionally attached myself, that's the thing. A lot of them,
Hmm.
after I spoke to, it's not that they liked it still.
It's their
Their
identity.
identity was wrapped around the fact that they know how to press record and this frame rate and this whatever, this, that. They didn't realize the value that they were actually providing, which was helping communicate something. Well, that's like the answer to that.
Hmm.
But it's like their identity was attached to the task they were doing. And I think that comes from that's a very poor way of thinking, not
Hmm.
like literally poor way of thinking. Because if
Yeah.
you think about it, like low level jobs, it's like, okay, he's a baker. And
Yeah.
then you think about, okay, what else could I do with my life? It's like, well, all I know how to do is bake, is
Hmm.
what you do with your hands. But
Hmm.
wealthy people don't make money with their hands. They make their money with their
No.
brain. So it's like,
Yeah.
uh, w- one guy's like a shoemaker or they're a fry cook. It's like, I just know how to cook. What do you mean I could be this, that? But it's
Hmm.
because their identity is attached to the thing that comes off of their labor and what they actually do with their hands.
Yeah.
So it's like a total
Yeah.
mind F to tell someone that you could literally be anything. So, but if your identity is attached to the task, number one, you're done with AI. Like you're cooked.
Yeah.
Number two is if it's just the thing that you're doing right now in the pursuit of actually finding the value that you actually provide, then you could take a step back and attach to something else and attach to something else. And now you have it's like, I don't know if I would call it humility or whatever it is, but it's like you have the ability to detach from what you're doing. So you could have 5 years in a very specific thing. And once you realize that it's not it, you can let it go and you
Yeah.
can move to the next thing. It's like, okay, like
Mhm.
think about your and I's path. It's like you were doing, like, even just posting on social media. We could have gotten super attached to the identity of being like a social media expert, social media manager.
Yeah.
But you can
Yeah.
detach from that and go to like, okay, these guys get compensated more because they drive revenue. So, okay, ad.
Mhm.
But why do ads
Mhm.
drive revenue? It's okay. Client acquisition as a whole, sales and marketing. It's like,
Yep.
okay, now you can detach from that and go learn positioning and messaging and all this other stuff. And now
Yeah.
it's like
No, I
you
think
detach from that and continue going, and like you can continue to go as long as you're not attached to the literal thing that you do, especially with AI, because what you do could be automated tomorrow. And with the like literally what you do today could be automated tomorrow. And if you think about how to grow enterprise value of your business, again, more accurate view of reality. Reality says people are willing to pay more for your business the less you're attached to it.
yeah. No, exactly, and I think that's also where a lot of people, like, in terms of the labels of what you label yourself as and what you identify as are some of the most important things of, like, "Oh, I do this or I do that." It's like, "No, no, okay, I'm a learner." Like, that's something that's
I
kind of more
solve
fundamental.
hard
Uh,
problems is like
I provide yeah, I provide value, like, I try to enhance, I bring up whatever, like, those are things where are consistent and they're that because I think also the other interesting thing is like as an entrepreneur, it's like especially or entrepreneur slash business owner, it's like you are whatever it needs to be. Like you are the one who needs to get the job done, whatever that requires in a sense, right? Whether that is you doing it or you having someone else do it or a combination of the two, that's what it is. And it's more detaching from the service or specific thing versus
the labor.
like McDonald's was like providing enjoyment to families. It's like, I mean, in the beginning, like if you think about it, right? So it's more the outcome or the intangible thing that you're trying to do versus the actual thing you do. Because a lot of it, like if I say if we were to say as like a meta example of a like does a restaurant and a movie theater compete with each other? Like technically no. But realistically, yes, because if you and I are to hang out tonight, we could go to dinner or we could go to a movie.
Yeah.
So like they both provide a service or an outcome of like us having a good time and hanging out in different ways.
Yeah.
And that's really just the understanding of like, okay, what are the underlying things of that, right? It's hospitality, it's having a good time, having a good experience. And some of those things I think are definitely important. Now, before we veer off too much in terms of different things, and I'm sure we could, I want to spend the last couple minutes more focused on are there any things you like kick yourself for not doing? Like if you were to go back, there's a lot of things where I feel like obviously I'm glad the path I went in terms of a more untraditional route of kind of throwing myself into a startup and finding a mentor early on. But what are things you feel like you should have done that you didn't, and that you're like now, like, dude, if I just did that back then, like, it would have been something crazy.
Yeah. Uh, there's a lot. Like, uh, one of them is like, coachability. I can be pretty hard English
Okay.
because I'm like intelligent.
Yeah.
And you have horsepower up here, but also you don't have experience. So it's like
Mhm.
the equivalent of Claude giving you an answer that they at 100 is like, yeah, this is totally it, and you're like, you're so wrong. You have no idea how
Mhm.
wrong you are because you don't have context of the
Mhm.
actual situation. That's one thing. um, is coachability and actually implementing things that the people ahead of you, if they're actually ahead of you, give you
Yep.
to do is one thing. Because at that point, you kind
Mhm.
of just trust in the fact that they're ahead of you and you continue moving forward. And then you kind of have to
Yep.
be aware of when they're not ahead of you and when to ignore it. Um,
Mhm.
Two is once you're in the room to maximize. It's not that haven't maximized the opportunity that I have had once in the room, but it's like whatever you think you could do, you could always do more. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, even though I don't know, it sounds weird, but it's like giving myself the grace of not having worked an 18-hour day when I already put in a 16-hour day. But I even know I'm looking at it, and it's like once you're in the room with that type of person, if you were even if you were working 12 hours a day, you could have put in 14. You could have put
Yeah.
in six, like whatever it might be,
Yeah, there's always more if the urgency is there and the necessity.
and that goes into the final thing, which is what does that urgency and necessity come from? Is knowing why you're doing stuff and knowing
Mhm.
having a very clear outcome of what you want out of it is something that I think I've struggled with. Um, because you could have all this knowledge and have all these skills and have all this wisdom, but if you're not clear around where you're directing the weapon, not pretty.
No, for sure. You could definitely go in all types of different directions or get consumed by whatever the quote unquote trending or latest thing is as opposed to be very clear. I think I'm surprised you kind of didn't mention this and it's interesting. I know the one thing where I'm like, damn, it's like and it's been right under my nose the whole time, but like I regret now not building out more of a personal brand or like focusing or even spending some time in terms of documenting
Yeah,
or doing some of those things. Like, that's one thing where I'm like, "Damn, if I would've done that back then, like, it would've been a totally different place." Like, I do see one of the people I see that I like, Dan Martell, like, a lot of his people are creating a lot of different types of content, which I think is cool.
yeah,
Um, and the ability of that, I think that's sick. That's one of the things where I'm like, "Damn," like, I'm annoyed I didn't kind of maximize that, and even since, like, having worked there and just building my own company and getting busy, it's like, I've seen the power of content firsthand, and I've seen how, like, tremendous of a upside it is. I mean, it is one of the few things still today where you have an outsized amount of leverage, and it can compound like crazy in the sense of, like, alright, 6 months of grinding out content and being consistent can set you up for, like, a tremendous amount of stuff, um, and business opportunities, like, your luck surface increases. So, like, that's one of the things where
yeah, you're right.
I've
Yeah, that's what I mean
I've
by the
I'm
implementation point.
yeah, and it's funny because like, we both were so heavily into content for other people, but it's like, we did it, and we know how to do it, and we saw the impact of it in terms of the ROI and the back end of it, and like, "Okay, cool.
We don't.
Should have done it there. Got it."
We don't.
Like,
You know
been
what's
doing my own thing for
crazy?
a couple of years now,
Yeah,
should have done it then.
yeah.
And that's where I'm, like, partially pissed off because it's like the whole thing of like, "Okay, I'm probably smarter than you, I'm probably better than you, but I'm not participating, therefore you are winning."
You're winning.
And that's one of the things where, like, it's been brewing, like, subconsciously for me, but now I'm like, "Ah, you know what? I'm gonna, like, really step my foot on the gas because I do think like it's important. I could do it. It's just the implementation thing, like you're saying, and taking the time and being consistent enough about it. That's where I'm like, all right. So if I could push back and like say anyone they'd be like, "Dude, just document it." It's like the amount of viral things I've seen where it's like, "Hey, day 3 in the life of trying to do XYZ. Follow along if you wanna learn more." Like, the amount of those I see blow up on social media and, like, in terms of that and
It
granted,
being not
blowing
interesting compared to
at all.
any, like, not being anything remotely as interesting as probably what we've seen behind the scenes.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where I'm like, "Ah, frick." And a lot of that I think comes down to probably at least for me, analysis paralysis, as opposed to being novice and being new and not knowing what the hell is good and what bad looks like and just shooting your shot. I think that's one of the other things too of like most people traditionally, and I'll finish off with this, is like they're so entrenched of what everyone else thinks, or they're worried about the perception of losing something they have or they don't have. And like you're playing more in the sense of not to lose than you are playing to win. And the beauty of being young is you have nothing to lose, and therefore you're more willing to take the bigger swings. And I think that's like, if there's anything I could recommend anyone early on, regardless what you're trying to do, is like, dude, just swing for the fences. Like at the end of the day, you're young, you have nothing to lose. Leave the school, go do this thing. You can take a semester off, you can come back. Like I, for the first 3 years, had people telling me like, well, it's not too late to go back to school. It's like, bro,
I still get
I make more money than you. Like,
that.
I have way more experience
I
than
still
you.
get
Like,
that.
yeah. So like give yourself the permission to do that. And then even for the people that are older, it's like give yourself the permission to start over and suck at something. And just the mantra I've really been living by, and this is definitely like the startup ethos venturing back, is like done is better than perfect. A subpar piece of content that's posted is better than the content that's 99% there but never gets posted. Like, just do, because at the end of the day, people don't really care about you as much, like not even remotely as much as you think. And especially with social media now and a lot of these algorithms, it's like it's gonna find the people that do care if you're just consistent enough about it. And you're gonna find your own ecosystem. Like you mentioned, I haven't gone to college, neither of you. I just moved to a new city. And I know like nobody, like technically zero people here. I've just started DMing people. It's like I find an entrepreneur kind of guy, and I'm like, "Yo, you're here? Okay, sick. Let's meet up." And we do it, and like building a network that way. And it's like we have this tremendously powerful tool in our hands, but we're not utilizing it to even the remote capacity of what it's capable
You know
of.
what's funny is after you saying that, it's like, because we do come from content background. I actually think the opportunity with even as competitive as it is now, because I look at stuff and I'm just like, dude, it is so competitive now. Like the stuff that's out there is so good sometimes that I think for me and you, that's probably why we don't pull the trigger on it. Because some of the stuff I see, like this one guy's podcast, Grant Owen, he just rented out the studio that Batman was filmed in and filmed the podcast inside of that. I thought
I
that
was
was
watching that
sick.
yesterday. It's sick. It's
I'm
sick.
like, dude, that's insanely. That's amazing. But I think with all of that being said, uh, I know it's kind of looked at as this like past and gone opportunity, but even after you saying that, I still think that social and content and being able to have some form of personal brand is a bigger cheat code than even AI.
Oh, for sure. Because I think like your luck surface area just increases dramatically.
You get to be in the
And
other rooms just because you have a
yeah,
following, like, and then you start
and
learning
it's
the
and
game.
it's and it's an outsized compounding asset. I mean, it's like code and content are probably some of the most valuable things we're going to go into, and especially now also with AI, in terms of like you can now outproduce a media team of 5 people back in the day. And like me on my phone can generate millions of views, like not requiring
Yeah.
anything. I remember back in the day when like you'd need editors and this, that, the other, and 2 week turnaround and da 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 da. It's like now you can just raw dog a piece of content, post it, yap, and then you can do it. So that's definitely one of the things that I would 100% recommend anyone at any age, especially if you're young. And that's one of the mental notes I'm telling myself, and really going to put effort towards staying consistent and posting more, and kind of just doing it, because there's 15 minutes of time can give you unlimited upside if you just stay consistent.
Yeah. Damn, you're right.
And that's the pod.
That's need to post the last one.
Yeah, no, it's like that, but I'm dead ass. Like I looked at that and I was like, dude, I just need to like be consistent.